Hello and welcome to my week 2 of startup productivity and personal life. So last week I kind of introduced this idea of using startup productivity techniques and methodologies in my personal life as a way to become more productive, get things done, and I guess learn how to focus better. This is my weekly update, kind of my stand-up, so to speak. All right, so last week I used a tool to create, there we go. Why is that not? Alright, whatever. Last week I used a tool to create a presentation called not PowerPoint, LibreOffice Impress. This week I tried something a little bit different, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So, I guess before I get into the weekly update, which is right here, I wanted to kind of discuss what my goals are. So, my goal is to write a young adult fiction novel and to create a Markdown editor. That's basically what it is, and I'm giving myself until the end of October to do so. That's kind of the overview. In the past week, I found a few productivity apps to track my progress and to do other things, things that basically just help me along the way. Found some books to read and emulate when it comes to young adult fiction. I took a bunch of notes, and I found really good competitors to the Markdown editor that I've been looking at, or that I want to build. So let's talk about applications. There are a few applications that I've used in the past week. MARP is one of them. MARP is a Markdown editor that created the slideshow. I'm not a big fan of the slideshow because I'm having issues displaying it, and my PDF reader it does not correctly display it. So I'm probably going to switch to something else, but it's so nice writing in a Markdown editor, writing slides in a Markdown editor. I might look back into Reveal.js or SlideShare or something like that. I started using Pivotal Tracker. Pivotal Tracker is like an agile tool, and I should have a screenshot on the next page of that. It's a tool that tracks what's currently being done, what's been done, what's in the icebox or the backlog, what's coming up in the next few weeks, and it also tracks how quickly you get tasks done in terms of velocity, right? So you rank tasks 1 through 8 or 1 through 5, whatever your ranking is, and over the course of several weeks, it figures out how many points you actually do per week, and it can kind of accurately estimate how long it's going to take you to finish when get to the next checkpoint or whatever. It also has like cool tags, so you can see the progress of different tasks. So I can put my writing and my Markdown editor tasks into one single list, but I can also track them kind of separately. I've also been using Pocket. Pocket is a tool that allows you to kind of bookmark a page and then come back to it later. So it's like a read it later kind of situation. It actually used to be called read it later. I've also used Evernote to take some notes, but for consideration, used Paper. Paper is an application by Dropbox, and let me see if I'm in a browser instance right now, so why don't I show you guys what that looks like. How do you go back from full screen? I have no idea. Is it F12? Nope. F10? F11? F11. Alright, let me show you what Paper looks like. It's a product by Dropbox. It used to be called Hackpad, and since then it was bought out, and this is kind of what it became. So let me show you why books. So it looks really nice. What's cool is that it allows this like pseudo Markdown, so you can write Markdown, but it automatically converts it into HTML, which is nice. I kind of like that feature. I like being able to write Markdown and not have to worry about the different styling, but have it translate into a regular HTML. The other cool thing is, restart required, okay, is you can see kind of over here, it keeps track of your headings, so you can easily navigate between them. I think it was F10. Let me see if I can show you Pivotal Tracker. Let me go ahead and switch to my new account, and I can go ahead and show off the Pivotal Tracker. I think they provide a free tier for like one user or like one project or something like that. So that totally works for me. You can see that I have 3 tasks coming up, and they're 0 out of 7 points because that's what they were ranked as. And let me see if I can see previous week. You have a current, which is what you're working on, backlog, icebox. You can also set that you started or finished a task, and oh, there's done. And you can see like I did all these different things. I had to do site migration. I added it here as kind of like a test run of using it, and to give myself like a good amount of points that I know I can depend on. So it takes me about 15. I do about 15 points a week by myself. I think that's pretty neat. So yeah, so that's Pivotal Tracker. And let's go back here and let's continue the presentation. No? There we go. Okay. Yeah, and this is paper, so I think it was nice, better for me to kind of show you guys what that looks like. And Pivotal Tracker as well. Alright, Markdown Editor. So let's talk about the Markdown Editor a little bit. I had some name ideas, not very good ones. Omen was one, Open Markdown Environment Notebook, just because I like the word Omen. But yeah, Omen is just such a generic word. I think, you know, there probably is a tech company out there or something that has that name, a software company, and I don't want to clash with anybody. There's also Yaoi, the yet another writing instrument. I just kind of like the way that looked. Yami, same thing. So I'm thinking about one of those two so that it's somewhat generic but not really. And there's also Mo, which is the Markdown object editor. And the reason it's called that is because I created a spec for a language called the Markdown Object Markup Language, MOML, which will be a driving force behind the Markdown editor. Something like Mo or something like that. I don't know. So one of those will probably work. But still thinking about it. I'm not really set on it. I think it's okay. So some of the MVP features, I've been thinking about this long and hard. Just what features do I want to include in the initial release of the Markdown editor? So obviously it has to be basic Markdown editor. You add Markdown, you see the result. Basic writing metrics, words written. And I've seen some cool NPM packages that calculate like the grade level and some of this other stuff, and I think that's great. Like if you can enable that, that would be great. Or even just set like a basic how long, you know, let's say an average person reads 60 words per minute, so like how long is this chapter in terms of minutes. I like all those things that I see like on Kindle. You know, you have time to finish, you know, how many words it has, whatever. Listing of files in a folder. So if you open the Markdown editor, I want to make sure that you can have a sidebar that shows you the directory you're in, plus all the files, and all the different folders, and you can kind of browse through there, so you never have to leave the Markdown editor to open a file. I think that was one of my biggest gripes with some of the Markdown editors, like Markpad. I know that I used in the past. You had to go into an open dialog. I don't want to do that. Open and save files, obviously saving settings and cache per project, so creating like a .mo folder that allows you to save settings like view settings or whatever it is and cache per project. The reason I say cache is because I want to be able to read all the different files and create like an index for searching in the future. Something like that, and a well-designed UI. So I'm not a UI expert, I'm horrible with design. That's going to be my biggest problem, and I'll show you why. Not yet, but I have a screenshot of a mock-up, and the mock-up looks horrible. So what are the competitors? So Scrivener is one. Scrivener, you know what, let me just... I thought it was F10, so it's F11? F11. So let me just open these. These are actual links. So Scrivener is like the IDE, the integrated development environment of writing. It has... I wish it had better screenshots. It has... God damn. Alright, let me see. You can create all these different notebooks. You can create all kinds of different notes. Oh my god, so many notes. Synopses. You can create... There's like a card view. There's like this rear previews, research materials that you can put. You have a scratch pad. Like it's got everything. It's got everything, but it's bloated and it looks like it came from the early 2000s or 1990s, which is a problem. And it also doesn't support Markdown. All it uses is RTF, and it's such a pain in the ass. And exporting it You can export it as RTF, or like if you lose Scrivener, you can still view all these files as RTFs, all the different files in your chapters and whatever. The problem is that everything else, like the synopses, plot notes, is saved as an RTF as well, so it's difficult to go through it manually. I don't want that. The next one is boost notes. So I actually went through. I want to build this Markdown, and I guess I didn't talk about the technology. I'm not going to talk about it much. I want to build this Markdown editor using Electron. So I'm able to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to build this Markdown editor, and then have it run as a desktop application. And I want to make it a desktop application first. So I looked through. Markdown editors are like a very, I guess, popular topic for Electron. So I looked through some of their best ones and just kind of picked them out. So this one is called Boost Note. It has note taking. It's a note taking app and has tags and search. You can see it kind of looks nice. It kind of looks more like Evernote. It does actually look exactly like Evernote, but it uses Markdown files as a backend. So when I was talking about that per project cache, that would also include the possibility of having presets, like, hey, I want to write a book, so you see the list of files and folders and whatever. Or this is a note-taking application, so it would show up a little bit differently, maybe with like a little preview like they have here. I think this is really awesome, especially with the tags and everything. And since it's Markdown, it means that you can build your own backend or front end on top of it, and you can edit it with Notepad if you want to. It has really cool Markdown syntax, and that's cool. And it looks like you can do some code editing as well. Then there's MD Note, which is note-taking using regular files. Same as Boost Note. There's search, comment, and blog post publish. The site doesn't look that great to me, but it has a... I don't think I have JavaScript enabled for this site. Maybe that's what the issue is. Nope. It's not loading the images. Alright. Well, whatever. Wow, that really sucks. Okay, so there's a cool preview here. So you have like a Markdown editor. It looks really nice. They have a note tree. This is kind of what I'm talking about, having that like folder file tree, creating new ones from there so that you don't have to leave the editor. Finding new notes, so I like the searchability as well, and that's what I was talking about, the cache, being able to kind of look through all the notes, cache them, and be able to do full text search on it. You can add comments, and I wonder how that works. I think that would be an interesting thing to look at, but I'm guessing that it kind of just adds a part, like a section in the Markdown file with that stuff. And you can publish. Now, the publishing part is something I don't really don't care about. I don't need to integrate it with WordPress or Tumblr or whatever. And presentation. If the presentation works well, I might actually write the next presentation in this thing. It's having some hiccups here. All right, and so then there's abricotine. I don't know. And one thing I liked about that, it's a very simple. Oh, yeah. So the presentation works again. See, you can write down, and you have a presentation made out of it. So that's something what I'm gonna probably use next week for making a presentation. So there's abricotine. I think that's what it's called. The best thing about it is this. Look at how beautiful that Markdown looks. Oh, it looks like the image scales. That's awesome. So you have, you do your hashbang, not hashbang, but your hashtag to make this into an H1. The H1 shows up, and this shows up as like, hey, this is Markdown. You have the little stars. The text itself is italic, but the stars tell you like, hey, this is Markdown. It's really nice. It looks gorgeous. The to-do list is like a little bit over the top for me, but it looks fucking-just. And table of contents again. That's the table of contents is actually built from the headings. I like that idea a lot too. So we saw that a little bit in paper. We'll see how difficult that is. There's also Laverna. I really don't like that I'm spending like so much time on this, but I feel like it's a little bit important. Laverna. Yeah. I really wish that they had kind of better screenshots. So if you can see this, it's again kind of like Evernote, but it looks really nice. It's kind of like having that tree on the side, but you have also like a preview. Last one is PileMD. Now this one, if I remember correctly, has the nicest UI. Yeah, so you can see it's still the same thing. You know, it highlights everything. It highlights JavaScript. Now you can pick a folder and it'll have this nice thumbnail preview of what's in there, including if you add images, it looks like. So it just looks amazing. I really, really, really like this. Syncing I don't really care about, but it looks really nice. Being able to move files. It's just a gorgeous editor. So let me show you what the mockups look like. So the mockups kind of look shitty in the preview. Using this presentation. So I'm just gonna pull these up one by one. So as you can see, you know, I want that little sidebar on the side. It's not even a mockup; it's more like a layout. You know, you have folder 1, folder 2, you open a folder 1, you have the empty file. Now, this thing here is interesting. So what I want to do is, instead of showing the file name, I want to grab the title of that Markdown file and just throw it here. And that's part of the caching as well, just being able to associate the two together. The reason is that because a lot of the times you just name a file whatever, like chapter 1, but it doesn't tell you much of anything about that chapter. When you change the title, I want to be able to see what's happening there. Like, this is supposed to be that I changed the title and it's the title. The next thing you'll notice is the headings here. So I used PenFlip in the past. PenFlip is a Markdown editor as well, and it's kind of cool. It's very technical in some ways, and it's really cool. But one thing I liked about their editor is the fact that when it had a heading, it would push it out to the left so that it's still flush, but you have these little headings as like tick marks, so that when you're scrolling through, you can see where you have that heading, and this doesn't the Markdown doesn't break up the flow of the document. I think that's really like the best part of it. Now notice here in the corner, if it's visible, if you're on low enough or high enough resolution, and if you're not, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Why don't we just zoom in on it? There are 3 different modes. There is a title and content mode, which is this. There's a full screen mode, which is, I'll show you what that looks like, and then there is a Markdown object markup language mode. So this is the what I like to call full screen mode. It just basically means that this is what the raw Markdown actually looks like. Using my Markdown object markup language, you're able to specify these different variables, and then they get rendered out in a certain way. So what this is doing is just showing you the raw Markdown. This is what it kind of would look like in a nicer way. This is what the raw Markdown looks like. This way you can add whatever variables you want, and this is what it is. You can add a field called tags and just add tags. You can add a field called comments, and you can add comments, and you know what you would see as the raw Markdown would be these 3 lines separating a variable with the value, which in this case would be variable name tags, value tag 1, 2, 3, 4. I really like that idea, and I'm just really excited about it. And I'm excited about having these 3 views. Let's do F11, and let's keep going. Whatever. So that was it for the Markdown editor. So I've got a pretty good idea of what I want to build. I've got a pretty good idea of what I want to do technology-wise. I'm going to be using the latest of JavaScript. I'm going to be using Angular 2. I'm thinking of using Bootstrap as the first kind of iteration for styling, because I'm horrible with styles. I'm very, I feel weird about it. I'm not a big fan of using Bootstrap. So we'll see how that goes. And that's going to be my task for next week. I should probably write that down. Let's write it down on paper, right? Next week. So with the Markdown editor, let's see that? It's so nice. Markdown editor. I want to pick the right technology, build a hello world. That just means that I can string up the technology all together and it works, kind of how you'd expect it. And research Markdown libraries. So that's going to be a big one as well. But that's it. We're going to add it to this folder. I just love the user interface on this thing. Like, just see that? It's so nice. But yeah, okay. Let's go back. Let's go to writing and reading. So switching tracks a little bit. This is less technology oriented. I've been doing a lot of research for the past week on what I want to write and what I need to read. So let's look through that. I looked at competition and inspiration. It's not really competition. It's just the top 2016 YA books, plus like some of the YA books that have been making rounds. Some of these I've read. I've read one of these, and a lot of these were recommended to me, and I decided to just kind of take some notes and look at what's going on. So the first book is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Wow, I misspelled that. There's a movie coming out. It's a paranormal, supernatural kind of book. It kind of stands out that it's not like any of the others in this list. The next one is The Arithmetist, and along with The Reckoners, it was written by his last name is Sanderson. Brian Sanderson? Yeah, so his name is Brian Sanderson. I've been hearing some things about him. It looks like he writes fantasy. Mistborn, I think, is the most known book that he's written. So I looked at those. They're very fantasy-ish. There's another book called Timebound by a different author. Mystery with a little bit of time travel. Lunar Chronicles looks like a romance. If I remember correctly, it was like romance with a little bit of fantasy. Winter's Curse, romance, fantasy. Lady Midnight, fantasy mystery, fantasy intrigue, fantasy. So as you can see, a lot of the trend has been, for this past year, lots of fantasy. And on top of that, it has been very Game of Thronesy. Now, what I mean by Game of Thronesy is that there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of intrigue, there's a lot of magic being as a secondary element in this fantasy realm. Fantasy where the fantasy land is very well established, and it's a big, very complicated world. Most of these, if I remember correctly, and I have notes on the next slide, were pretty much like that. And when I say Game of Thronesy, like, I really mean that. Like, lots of political intrigue, lots of stuff with the main character trying to navigate these sharp waters of politicians, of the crown, of the people, stuff like that. And it's really interesting. So I had no idea I was going to write a post-apocalyptic sci-fi, and then I went through like the top, I think, 50 books, and I'm like, this is all like fantasy romance and fantasy intrigue. This is like a typical YA cover these days. It's usually a woman, and there's usually a sword, and you know that it's going to be a fantasy book. So some analysis. The average length is about 400 pages, under 400 pages of these books. So it's about 350 to 400 pages. Most of those you'll see there in that range, and I've checked out a few others. Now, there is no word count, and word count is more important to me than page count, mostly because I can track word count much better than page count. So I looked at one of the books that I've published, and I know that there were about 60,000 words, and that book was well within this range. So 400 pages is around a little over 65,000 words. 350 pages is about, I believe, 55,000 or 60,000 words. So it's in that range of 65,000 words that it would fit. The setting is usually fantasy plus I guess it's not a setting, but it's more of a genre, is fantasy genre plus some kind of subgenre, whether it's the romance, whether it's mystery, where it's whatever. Protagonist, there's a somewhat even male-female split, though it feels like there are a lot more female protagonists. The other thing is the average person gets elevated to a very high position. That's kind of like a trope that I've seen. But I have more notes. Themes and notes. Some things, there's inherent evil, unexplainable immoral evil. That's at least what I got the idea from. I went through TV tropes. Let me show you what that looks like. tvtropes.org. Great website. It lists a lot of the tropes, and trope is like I want to say cliche. It's kind of like a cliche. And I went through TV tropes, and this is like a huge, massive index of all these different cliches and how they all relate to each other and where they come from. So they have an entire section for young adult literature. They talk about, hey, it's like usually a coming-of-age story, usually tackles some sort of societal issue, usually actually appeals to adults, but it's marketed as young adult to make money. And most of the books that I have listed are in here. So what was interesting is that from reading just the back cover of these books, I thought that one of the big themes was inherent evil. It turns out it's evil, but like moral evil. Like evil is kind of murky, but it is one of the themes that there's like this immoral evil, and I guess one of the things that happens is that it's explained away, or people try to understand it. The next theme that I see a lot is that war is always looming. There are always other kingdoms trying to attack. The kingdom is always at the brink of being destroyed. Or there's a dark wizard that's trying to destroy everybody. There's always war about to happen. Usually it doesn't, from what I've seen, usually it doesn't actually happen. It's just like it increases the tension, and it adds to the pacing of the story. Now, before I keep going, the reason I keep looking over here to this side is because that's where I have the recording, and I want to see if I'm moving my hands and if I'm in the shot and if it's blurry or not, or whatever. Anyway, so war is always looming. Magic is secondary but still important. This is another interesting part. So if you think about some of the fantasy books that, very common fantasy books like The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and I've just exhausted pretty much all I know. There are obviously lots of other fantasy books, and I've read many fantasy books. Nothing comes to mind right now. Magic is like a huge deal. I'm becoming a magician. Like Harry Potter, like not really fantasy, but I have magic, or there's magic in the world, this and that. The themes of these books is usually that magic is secondary. I'm trying to solve the problem for my kingdom, and I have magic. Or I'm a lowly servant doing something, and then I find out I have magic. Like the magic is a secondary but still important element. The themes that I often see is politics, passion, and power. Politics, trying to, like I said, navigate the courts, navigate this or that. Passion, lots of romance, lots of high, emotions running high, and then power, power struggles. Something I noticed about protagonists, lowly someone elevated, as I said, they find out about their heritage, they run into the king, they run into a prince, they save the prince, whatever, or the princess, whatever, and they get elevated to a higher status. Moral struggles increase as position elevates. That was something that I guess I was kind of thinking of. Some of the books hinted at it, but again, I read back cover synopses, so... it's interesting because it's basically like, oh, hey, I'm a lowly person. I'm like a farmer on a small village that makes barely any money, but doesn't have to deal with moral struggles. And then they save the prince who was drowning, and the prince is like, you're gonna become my royal guard. And then all of a sudden you have these moral struggles of, well, do I kill this person because I've been ordered to? Do I not kill that person? If I become the king or queen, like, what do I do with that? Like, whatever. And love interest adds to the struggle. I've seen that everywhere. Maybe, the savior of the prince falls in love with the prince. Maybe the prince is in love with the savior, but not the other way around. Maybe there's a lowly servant that savior is interested in, or the protagonist is more interested in, and the prince has an issue with it. Maybe the protagonist is a soldier, and the person that they fall in love with is on the other side. Like, it just adds to the struggle. And I have more notes. So let me check out those notes real quick. Whoops. Paper. Let me see. Why books? Okay, so I wrote a few more notes, and I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in on these. Friendship and loyalty, gaining, breaking, and losing friendships. Friendship is a huge thing. Dark forces inherent evil. Again, I kind of marked that down just because the synopsis is eh. Okay, I mentioned this. Internal struggle as life gets complicated. Lowly hero just killed a monster. A future queen had to decide to compromise her beliefs in order to gather an army that kills a monster. Does it make sense? Like, that's an internal struggle due to responsibility. Hero befriends somebody important, possibly by saving them or the other way. Sometimes they can kidnap them. That's something I've seen as well. Love interest adds to the struggle. They may be an enemy, an unwelcome ally after heartbreak, or destiny keeps them apart. Just another thing that kind of increases the tension when it comes to all these things. So I'm really excited about working on log lines from this because I've been already writing down about the setting, and I want to mention that because the next slide is the last one. And actually, while I'm talking about that, why don't we write down notes for next week. Writing. So I want to have a logline list. So logline is basically like a one-sentence summary of a book. And what I was reading about, I guess, or rather what I was thinking about is I have a setting, I have an idea about a protagonist, but I don't have a story, so that's why I need a logline. And so the setting is, I guess I can ruin the mystery here because who gives a crap. The setting is Mars, but several thousand years in the future. So the idea is that humans came to Mars, they colonized it, blah, blah, collapsed the civilization, and then you had, feudalism overtook, these old ideas overtook, democracy kind of doesn't work anymore. It's basically like Middle Ages somewhat, but it's a little bit different because people are living differently because they had, these weird ancestors that they only know as distantly, as the original people or something like that. Sorry about that. There are some really cool ideas I have to do with that, like finding ancient artifacts like an iPhone. I don't want to make this into a joke, but that's like a kind of an idea. One of the cool ideas I had was finding a portal that takes you back to Earth and then just having the characters kind of explore it and be like, what the fuck is this? So that's it. So it's Mars, several thousand years in the future, Middle Ages, and magic. So there's magic, and it's unrelated to the advanced technology of their ancestors. And they think that their ancestors were very skilled at magic, but those ancestors didn't have any magic at all. So it's kind of like a weird thing, and it's actually magic that keeps these people back. They keep thinking like we have to improve our magic in order to advance, and that's why they're stuck in this like feudalist Middle Ages era. They want magic to advance them because they think that this is what the ancestors did when the ancestors didn't do any of that. For the protagonist, I'm gonna write this. I'm gonna like a protagonist sheet. I want to have like a female protagonist that loses all their family, and that kind of spurs the beginning of the story. It's very much a trope. It's very much a cliche. Protagonist sheet is what drives them, backstory, etc. So I think by the time I'm doing this video next week, I want to have a pretty good idea of who that protagonist is. I definitely want that protagonist to be a female, and it's not just because that's kind of what the popular form convention is, though that has a big role in it. The other reason is that I've just gotten very used to writing female characters instead of male characters, and makes it easier for me to write, I would say. Not that female characters are easier to write, but it's just I've been writing them for so long that I have an easier time making them into these like full characters than male characters, where I tend to kind of follow stereotypes and it just doesn't work well. But yeah, so I mean, my goal for next week is to have a pretty good logline list, a settings description, a protagonist sheet to see what drives them, backstory, and so on. And yeah, I think that would be it. And let me go to the last slide. I believe that is the last slide. Gaming. So that was one of the subtopics that I picked, other than writing and reading. So I still want to pick one of those YA novels to read. Gaming was the other thing. And I realized that it doesn't really work well with this entire format, because gaming takes time, and if I'm reading something, I have an easier time writing. From gaming, I don't. It's a different format, different kind of storytelling. The positive thing is, with games, and I do gaming, so I'm not going to take this away, is that it can help figure out the setting. So I really like Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, because it's a political intrigue, fantasy, and adventure, and the setting is incredible. I mean, it is it is pretty much what I'm thinking of as the setting for the story, except Mars in the future. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, I don't know. Path of Exiles, I don't know. But those are just kind of the games that I'm thinking of, that I own and that I'm playing, that might help me get more in the mood for writing. Morrowind, very much so, but Morrowind is extremely boring for me. I've tried to play it many times. I spend like 60, 80 hours playing this game altogether, and it's usually 20 hours, screw it, I'm going to start from the beginning, 20 hours, start from the beginning, and so on. Anyway, so I think that's it. I talked about what I want to do next week. What I would like to possibly show you guys is inputting these tasks into Pivotal Tracker. I use Pivotal Tracker at work, and that's actually where I got the idea to use this. And Pivotal Tracker is amazing, and I'm hoping I'm not, you know, overstepping any boundaries with how I use it or how we use it at work, and I don't think I am. But what's interesting is how these tasks are created. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. So you create as granular tasks as you can. For example, research technology, and you do points. There's 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, so that's Fibonacci scale. And at work, the way we do it is 1, you know exactly what you need to do. 2, you know what you need to do, but you have to integrate some technology that you are not familiar with, or it's a third-party technology. 3, I have done as much research as I can. I can only jump into it. 5, it still needs to be discussed. 8, this is more of a note rather than a task to do. So research technology, I know exactly what I want to do. I am the owner, and you can add labels. And I will say this is Omen. I'll need to change that tag. Yeah, I guess that's it. And then you just save it. And it automatically puts it into current because it knows I can do 17 points in a week. And it's like, hey, you have 8 points, I'm going to queue up more tasks. Build Hello World with Research Technology. So this would be a 2, because I am not entirely certain. I have a pretty good idea. I know what I'm going to build, but it requires some kind of integration. So it's still Omen. Save. Did I add myself as the owner? Yeah, I did. Alright. Let's do research Markdown libraries. And I will say that's a 2. That's a 1 because I know what I need to do. I just need to research. Omen. And as I'm saying this, I realized that I need a Markdown highlight library. Research. Now there are story types. There's, you know, chore. This is more of a chore. This is not a part of this is not part of a specific task. I tried to kind of split these up. The problem with chores is that it doesn't count for points, I believe. Let's see, research technology. This would be a chore. Yeah, 10 out of 10. Yeah, so it doesn't count the points for it. Unfortunately, that I would say kind of is the downfall of this. And I did finish the mockups, and I did deliver it. Find recent games, I did do that, but then I kind of abandoned the effort. Brainstorm loglines, I actually started on that earlier. So I know exactly where I'm at and what I need to do until next Wednesday, and I'm recording on a Wednesday right now. Wow, this video has gotten really long, but whatever. For writing, logline brainstorm. Wait, I already did that. I need to do a solid logline. What is it? Like a second round, like a logline draft list. I would say that's a 3, I guess. Is that a 3? I can't really do more research on it. I just need to kind of do it. Yeah, I think that's a good one. And that'll be writing. I'm gonna do post on logline.it. I think that's what it is. Logline.it. Logline.it is a website where you can post a logline, which is like this sentence, and people can vote on it. People can kind of give you reviews, and that's kind of cool. That is at 1 point, definitely. I'm the owner and writing. Let's see, settings description and materials. I would say that's a 2 because I have to kind of find those materials, and it's a writing thing. We'll say protagonist sheet. That's that, and we'll just copy paste this note in here. Done. Writing, and I would say it's 3 points. Yeah. So what did I forget, guys? Reading. By a book to read. I would say that's a 1. I know exactly what I need to do. Oh, actually it's a 1. It's not writing, it's actually reading. And I'm gonna be just good with that. The next thing I wanted to show you guys is the fact that I can do epics. I'm going to close out the icebox. And what you can do is basically track some of these bigger story or these tags as like bigger stories. So we're going to do Omen, and it's going to be we're going to do writing editor. And we have done, there are 5 stories, and you can see like how far I am into that. There's also writing. So not the writing editor, but just writing. And you can see I've already started a few tasks, or 1 task, and I'm pretty far along as well. But yeah, that's it, guys, and girls and gals and lasses and men and whatever. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. This was kind of my check-in. One thing I will say is that I did spend a good amount of time trying to find this stupid editor, and now that I found it, I don't really like it, which sucks. And I'm really glad I found Paper. And I'm really glad that I started using Pivotal Tracker, that I found out that they had a free tier. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week, and I'm super excited about it.